Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Gilda Hilaire, and I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager at Salesforce. Welcome to part one of Journey Builder Basics, where you will learn all about Journey Builder UI, single send journey, multi-step journey, and much, much more, presented by Natalie Starr and Jason Court. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box in your GoToWebinar control panel. We will try to address these during the presentation and definitely at the end. We will also be sending the recording to the webinar and any link mentioned as part of the follow-up email. So please be on the lookout for that. Now, without further ado, we will get started. I will turn the time over to Natalie. Natalie, take it away.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome. Today we're going to go over Journey Builder Basics. One of the things that we're going to start with real quick before we go, my name is Natalie. I am with Acumen Solutions. I'm a marketing technical producer, and my co-host today is Jason Court.
Hi, Jason Court, lead application engineer for the Salesforce Marketing Cloud at Co-op here in the UK. And we've got a good agenda ready for today, where we're going to cover what Journey Builder is, some details around the UI, the journey types. We're going to do a quick run through of things like a single send email journey. We're going to do an introduction to multi-step journeys, as well as validation, testing, and how to version journeys as a quick intro to the fundamentals around using Journey Builder. So I guess the first part is, what is Journey Builder? And for me, Journey Builder is a multi-channel campaign management tool that enables marketers to really get into the details of creating a one-to-one customer experience without necessarily needing to lean so much on the technology that powers it. It's a really powerful user interface to create that seamless interaction between marketers and customers. But one of the key things about Journey Builder is what it's not, and it isn't necessarily a way to do high volume complex segmentation. It can consume that, but that needs to be dealt with prior to entering a journey. So trying to get that out there first before we continue too far on. In terms of what types of journey there are currently, as of the July release, there are 5 key types of journey, including the multi-step and therefore multi-channel, the push a few months back to enabling single send, starting with email, push, and SMS, and another recent addition with the transactional send for emails, which came out in the July release. So it's very brand new, ready for us to start digging into and working towards using over the next few weeks. And today we'll be covering the single send email and multi-step journeys, and moving on from there.
So great. Before we get started into the actual demo part, let's do a quick run through of the Journey Builder UI, just to get everybody situated. You can see in the far left, we have our entry sources and our activities. Across the top ribbon, you'll find the standards like undo last step, redo last step, and save. Please note, Journey Builder does not auto-save. Every time you make a change, make sure you hit the save button. Super important. The top ribbon also has validate, activate, versioning, goals and exit criteria, and journey settings. Next up, we have the quick snapshot of our entry source options. Some of these may or may not be available to you depending on your addition or any additional pairings purchased for your org. For instance, you won't see Salesforce data unless you have an integration set up between your Marketing Cloud instance and your Sales and Service Cloud. Another example of this is Google 360. The most commonly used sources are data extensions and Salesforce data, which again is only available on an integrated org. Salesforce Data Source allows us to take events from Salesforce and use them to create journey entrances. For today's demo, we will be using a data extension, but we'll go over the Salesforce entry sources in the upcoming sessions. Next, we'll look at the messaging activities, which includes mobile push, inbox notification, in-app messaging, SMS, and, well, of course, email. The most commonly used of these being email and SMS. If you haven't seen them yet, the last few releases have included the addition of new capabilities for SMS within Journey Builder, which I find has really simplified the process. Again, we'll be showing the email and SMS today as part of our demos. Next are the flow controls, some of which we will include in today, others we'll touch upon in the upcoming sessions. But this is how you're going to break up your different paths. This lets you manage how your contacts make their way through the journeys, including having them wait between messages, rejoining into groups, splits based on engagement, and of course, this is where you'll find Journey Builder's Einsteins. Next, we have customer updates. This allows you to update info in Marketing Cloud or Sales and Service Cloud. The Marketing Cloud update is the one that's closer to a teal color. This lets you write of what has happened in your journey to a Marketing Cloud data extension. The group below in the more bluer blue, those are the ones that will write to Sales and Service Cloud. These let you create or update Salesforce objects, including contact, lead, campaign, case, and also the non-standard objects. An example of a time you would use any of these updates, for the Marketing Cloud one of my favorite examples is a journey logging system that Adam Spriggs has posted a great tutorial on in his blog Signature Moves, which we've included the link for here. In regards to Sales and Service Cloud, a great example would be having your journey open a service case or add somebody to another campaign. Now, these are all native Salesforce activities. If you're interested in adding more activities such as direct mail or webinar support, check out Marketing Cloud's App Exchange. You can also create your own custom Journey Builder activities. This was covered recently in our Technical Marketers Monthly meeting. You can see the link in the resources or check out the Salesforce Developer Support if you're looking for more information on that. Journey Builder can support lots of different use cases, such as abandoned carts, loyalty rewards, birthday promos, lapsed customers, and welcome programs. Journey Builder allows you to choose between contact entry and re-entry as part of the journey settings. You may want a contact to never re-enter your journey, like for your welcome program, whereas a customer may abandon their cart more than once. So you'll want to re-enter them only after they've exited the journey for their previous abandoned basket. This is accomplished in Journey Builder with the use of a hidden attribute, sometimes referred to as the high water mark. I've put a little note here on this tab specifically about it. The attribute captures whether your contact has entered the journey. So depending on your journey settings, your journey checks the attribute for the contact that would otherwise have qualified for your journey entry and decides if it's allowed in or not. One thing to be aware of, you should not use an overwrite automation for your entry source DE, as it deletes all the information, including this attribute, before it builds in your new data, and that can cause problems for your journey settings. You can also, with journey settings, select the best method by channel for the contact. If you leave it on default mobile or default email, but if, for example, you're using Salesforce data as an entry, you might have both the customer's email and the account manager's email address in your entry source. Your email content should be sent to the customer, whereas the content of the email might display the account manager's information. This is where we would set which one we wanted the email to go to so that there's no conflict.
Thank you for that, Natalie. I'm going to go through a quick summary of creating a single send journey for email. There's a lot of elements of the single send journey for email that also apply in the multi-step, so it's worthwhile just covering that relatively quickly. So the scenario is, as a marketer, I've produced my campaign audience entirely outside of Journey Builder, and I wish to send a single email to that audience. So if I could just jump into Journey Builder now quickly, I will go through that from start to finish, creating a single send journey. So you can click, and when you enter Journey Builder, you get given the option for what you want to build. And in this instance, we're going to build a single send journey for email. And this creates a nice straightforward interface for you to create and schedule that communication. So the first step is choose a data extension for your audience. Click on data extension and then go and find the data extension that you wish to send your communications to. So look at week 1. So here we have a data extension of myself, Natalie and Gilda. We have the option to filter contacts. In this instance, we don't need to. And that creates the data extension relationship for this journey. You then need to choose your email attribute. In Journey Builder, you are able to create an email within the Journey Builder interface itself by clicking new message, but I prepared one earlier that I will be using for the sake of this demonstration in the Journey Builder Basics, where we have a single send email where you can preview and test this as you would in Email Studio, and understand what happens if there's any personalization, which we'll cover more in next week's session, and how that would appear to your contacts. So in this instance, we've got a previous bi-monthly meeting for technical marketers around the Content Builder Block SDK. So this would just be a call to action to register for that event. So I just save that and go back to the email itself. You will configure your message based on your send classifications, delivery options, as you would with a user-initiated email or a Salesforce send email from Email Studio. Those elements of the process persist and remain the same. You also have access to elements such as potentially throttling if your Journey Builder instance has that enabled, again, to give you some parity between what you would find in user-initiated sends and Salesforce sends through Email Studio in the Journey Builder interface. And once that's done, you get to choose your schedule. So we can set this to be in the future at any point in time. So 26th of August at Eastern time. Let's make it not midnight, because that's not going to be fun for anyone. So 4 p.m. You can save and validate and schedule your email from here. And that covers creating or bringing the audience to the creative and scheduling, just as you would with a user shared email or a Salesforce send email, just through the Journey Builder UI. So up next, we're going to look at, let's get that back up on screen. A multi-step journey. So in this instance, I have produced a campaign audience and wish to initially send them an email and then later send them an SMS also. So much like we saw the single send for email, there is a single send for SMS, but we want this to be in one place so it's easy to monitor, easy to update, easy to take a look at results. So if I swap back over to Journey Builder again, and I just jump out of this, and I'll create another new journey, give it a name. One. And you'll see the UI is now completely different because you've not got those guardrails that you have for a single send, but the principles remain the same. You can drag in your data extension, and I'll select the same one that was used in the previous journey. And we don't need to filter contacts in this instance. So to catch up with it. And then if we want to send an email, we can choose the same email asset that we chose before. Again, you can create a new email in line. You can use some existing creative if you've got it available. So if we just select that creative once more. Again, this is the exact same interface you'd have seen in the single send email previously. Nothing's different, it's all the exact same. And then we want to send an SMS after, let's say 7 days after you've received the first email, we want to send you an SMS. So we change the wait duration to 7 days. And then we add SMS activity. Much like emails in Journey Builder, you can create SMS within by selecting new message. But if I just select an existing message, you can drag, say, welcome SMS into there. I can't show you the rest of the configuration for this because we don't have SMS fully provisioned in this business unit. But the general gist, you would configure it the same way here as you would in a single send for SMS. You apply your short code and your keywords, and you provision it here just as you would normally. And then you save, you validate, and you can activate your journey depending on your schedule, which you will set here. And if, for example, this was to run only one time, you just choose run once, select that, done. Then you would continue configuring your journey through the journey settings to say no re-entry, and then use the appropriate attributes from source as Natalie explained earlier on in the session. So you can save that, validate that, and activate that once you're ready to go.
So a couple things to note. Once you've activated your journey, you can go back in and edit your email and change the message out. You can also do that on SMS. You cannot do that on other things. Wait times, for example, decision splits. Once that journey is activated, of other things out to your attention. When we're talking about waits, now we used a wait for 7 days. There are a couple of other waits that you can do, but know this, the wait activity is evaluated when you first reach that point. So if you're doing a weight by attribute where it's looking specifically for a date field, if that date field is empty when your contact reaches it, they will evaluate it then, and since there's no value, they will go right through it. So you want to make sure if you're doing a weight by attribute that there's a value in there. Also, you can't change that value once they've hit it. Again, they evaluate the weight when you first reach them. So if you were to update that field to change the date, it would not take that into account. So that is one thing I wanted to make sure to call out to everyone. One other thing that I like a SMS message at 2 a.m. in the morning. So what you can do is you can set your wait by duration and have it extend to a specific time, like say 8 a.m. The one thing to note about that is it's going to wait by your duration first and then until the time. So if you have it set to wait for 24 hours and then to 8 a.m., if you didn't hit that wait before 8 a.m., you might end up waiting 2 days because it has to wait the 24 hours before it can then wait to get to 8 a.m. And remember, it takes time for all of your contacts to go through each of these activities. So where they may have joined right at 8 a.m., by the time they've gotten through a few of your steps, the timing will have shifted based on how fast the system is able to process through. So it's just something to keep in mind. Now,
Yeah. So again, this was some of the text around what Natalie's just said. So you'll get this through in the slides tomorrow. So just in case you need to refresh your memory. So I went through at a summary level setting up your SMS. Again, unfortunately, I can't show you that entirely end to end because of the York that I'm in. But you have the exact same capabilities in Journey Builder as you would in Mobile Studio for your broadcast messaging. So you can select or create a message, set the short or long code to send it from, confirm the subscriber opt-in status, and set a blackout window. One thing to be aware of is the blackout window is a point where if you reach that stage, then during the window where your content isn't permitted to be dispatched because of the confines you put in place, it may just be discarded. So that's why the wait for a duration and extend until time is really important to make sure that your contacts don't reach an activity at a point in time where they could be discarded and the message not be distributed. So in terms of entry source, data extensions, and scheduling, I went through that quite quickly in the demo. You do require for a data extension, you do require a sendable data extension. You're able to filter the contacts you enter based on the wider set of attributes about a contact, whether that be demographic data you may have, or any attributes you may be receiving from Sales and Service Cloud or from your own, analytical, platforms. If you've determined that this person is less likely to convert for a campaign of this nature, you can exclude them from entering the journey in the first place. And again, when you first activate a journey with a data extension, you are given the option for all or only new records after the activation to enter the journey, which again is similar to the high watermark that Natalie mentioned previously. And you can also have your contacts enter a journey based on an automation completing. So if you have a process that is curating your audience through SQL queries, data filter, imports, whatever mechanism you're using to bring your audience data in to the platform, you can have it configured that your journey will not actually try and bring people into it without that having already been processed, rather than just relying on a schedule and assuming that data will definitely be there, just to give you that greater flexibility to make sure that when you are conducting your campaign dispatch, that you're running it through with the most relevant and up-to-date data that is available for you to run those campaigns. And a note here is that the Salesforce synchronized data extensions are not necessarily selectable as entry sources. So you may have accounts or person accounts, which is not necessarily a sendable data extension. Normally, the best practice would be to query from those synchronized data extensions or filter from those synchronized data extensions into an area where they are sendable. So if you needed to find all of your contacts who have got a relevant purchase type, you can query from there into a sendable data extension and append any attributes that you need there. Otherwise, the other option is that you can use Salesforce data and use Salesforce events to encourage people to enter the journey from the Sales and Service Cloud side of things instead, depending on what works best within your workflows. When it comes to validation and testing, when you click on validate, it checks a wide range of elements that even after years, there are things that I will forget, such as the journey settings to say, oh yeah, I need to make sure this is no re-entry. It's very much a grateful feature to have the validation and testing there, where it checks the entry source, the entry schedule, validates your decision splits can work and your wait activities are fully configured. It will also validate against the journey settings to make sure that you have an email address associated with the email communications, you have a phone number associated with your SMS activities, and that you have determined whether someone can re-enter or not, and at what cadence that can happen. For test mode, it runs real tests and it puts tests through with regards to, if I select 10 people from my sendable data extension that is associated with this journey, what paths would they take? So if you have decision splits to create, say, a high propensity to purchase versus a low propensity to purchase, you can test and confirm that your decision splits are performing the way you would expect, which is a really important thing to do when you're provisioning anything that may be a large volume campaign or it may be a long-term campaign. You want to make sure that if, for example, you have an abandoned basket campaign, that you aren't sending people through to the wrong types of communication. What it doesn't include is the wait times, which is good because sometimes you have journeys that have 4 or 5 day waits between decisions and content being relevant. So it won't include emails and it shouldn't include SMS either. And you can actually view the exact path that a contact would go through with a test having been run against a certain number of your campaign audience. You can have up to 10 people. So if you've got more than 10 unique flows, you may need to do it multiple times. But for most journeys, you probably wouldn't have 10 unique flows. So it does give you that flexibility just to validate what you're expecting happens and that it does actually happen. Once you've done all that, you get your rocket ship, you get your activation. I know that when a lot of people do their first journeys, their first rocket ship is a big deal, and it is a huge achievement to create your first journey and get it dispatched. And when you activate your journey, it creates a snapshot of the activities in the canvas, including the email assets and the SMS content, which Natalie mentioned previously can be updated and changed once the journey is active. And it begins to allow entry based on your schedule. So if you turn it on today, but it's scheduled to start entering people into the journey at 8 a.m. tomorrow, it's fine. You can activate it now. Nothing's going to happen in terms of entry to the journey until 8 a.m. tomorrow.
So one of the things that Jason pointed out was it takes a snapshot. So it's taking a snapshot of the email itself. So if you go into Content Builder and change your email, you will need to go into your journey to update that activity, or you would want to make a new version. So when you have a journey, you have a couple of options when it comes to versioning. When you're in a brand new journey, never launched, or in a brand new version, it's going to be marked as draft. This lets you edit it, but it's not allowing any entry. There's no audience, and it's not active yet. Once you flip the switch and it is now running, you can swap out the messages and some of the configuration within email and SMS, and it is active, but you can't edit many of the other things. As I mentioned, you can't edit the weights. You can't edit the decision splits. If you are wanting to make a new iteration or a new version, when you launch your new version, your old version will move to finishing. It will still allow you to do the same things that you could do when it's running, with one exception. It's no longer going to allow entry. Journey Builder is set up so that whatever version of the journey you start on, that is the version of the journey they will finish on, even if you have launched a new version in the meantime. Journey Builder does not have a way to map users from one version to another, so they will have to complete the journey where they are. You can also stop a journey, as I mentioned earlier. Stopping a journey makes you no longer able to edit. It is no longer active. There's no entry, and you have kicked out the audience, so there is no audience left in it. One thing to remember is if you're launching version after version, your older versions will sit in finishing until you clean them up to say stop. One of the recommendations I always give is when you go to start the third version, go back and check and see if there's anyone still in your first version. And if there's no one left, then go ahead and stop that version. That way you have a really clean instance.
So as we've been talking about versioning, if we look back at the previous multi-step journey scenario we had, we're looking at a new version of that, because the person with the purse strings who's determining how much money can be spent on your welcome journey has noticed that the cost of sending SMS has increased since you've started sending an SMS to everybody. So they have the requirement to prevent SMS messages being sent to customers have already engaged with us as a business within the email channel. So shall I jump over to Journey Builder and you can guide everyone through it, Natalie?
Yeah, that would be great.
If I jump over to Journey Builder, I will have to start and stop a journey just so you can see the versioning button turn up. So I will, as mentioned, get rid of the SMS because of the limitation that we have. This all, get everything set up. And you can see now live validation where it tells me I've forgotten something. It does sometimes take a couple of minutes just to validate the entire journey. but you should hopefully see a couple of things where it says you need to do this, you need to do that, just so you can see how the validation is presented to you as a user in case anything that needs to be changed. Or you get the joy of prepare for takeoff, and you can run through the tests.
If you do get a validation error, one of the things that I really appreciate inside of Journey Builder is the errors are much easier to decipher and read. They're mostly in plain speech. They tell you exactly what section it is that you need to go fix. And I found that the validation within Journey Builder to be some of the best error checking that we've got.
Yeah, and oftentimes it gives you a link directly to the point that needs to be updated, or it will highlight somewhere in the UI to say you need to go and update here or change that, or whatever it may be. So let's just move that email after one day, because I'm sure Natalie and Gilda don't want an email from me reminding them about an event that's already happened. We'll save that. We'll activate the journey. We'll do all of the same checking that it's done prior to activation, just in case there's been any changes. And you get your rocket ship. So we can return to journey, and you can see here that it is now on the ribbon menu. Everything's changed. You've not got the update and edit and change. You know, for your exit criteria, you've not got the previous action, redo previous action, all that kind of useful stuff. This is now in a production state. But in this scenario, I've just had a call from the finance business partner saying, SMS, you're sending too many of them, we need to stop doing it. So we can create a new version of the journey. And
so to make sure that we're not sending SMS messages to people who have already interacted with our emails, we're going to choose one of the flow controls. And in this case, we're going to use an engagement split. Engagement splits are great. They let you split based on the interaction. You can base it on open, clicked, or bounced. There's a couple of things to note about the engagement split. It has to follow an email message in your journey, but it doesn't have to be the very next action. You can see here we have a wait between the email and the engagement split. In fact, you can have lots of things between it and the engagement split. The engagement split itself will ask you to identify which message. So for example, if I had 2 emails going on and then did an engagement split, I would only be able to choose my engagement split to tie to one of those 2 emails. So in this case, we're going to pick that they have opened our email message. And so if they have not opened my email message, that's the group that I would like to send the SMS to. So here you can see there's a yes path and a no path. So that is where the breaks are, and that's where your traffic will separate based on that reason.
so if I just put in the same SMS that we had previously, the end result would be if your email has, for a welcome program, a 40% open rate, for example, you would expect to start sending 40% less SMS as a tangible output of this change. Again, same limitations persist with this journey, so I can only show you this far, but you should be able to get a good idea of how it's quick and easy to iterate on your journeys based on new requirements that come in, or based on any changes that you may need to make based on feedback or anything you might find when you do your analysis on the performance of your journeys. You can only have one journey version in draft, so just be mindful that you can't keep making lots of drafts and then put one live. But in this instance, we've made the decision that anyone who has opened an email from us in this journey would be considered engaged with the email channel and then would go down the route for SMS. But that doesn't mean that you can't consider using other activities like, a secondary email that says, hey, we've seen you've opened our email. You can even stack multiple engagement splits to say, has this person opened? Yes. Has this person opened and clicked? Yes. And provide really unique experiences to your customers based on this logic that you can build up in the UI in a really quick and straightforward manner. So if I just jump back to the slides. So as we just went through with regards to the engagement split, you can do it based on open, clicked, and bounced. It doesn't have to be the email directly prior to the engagement split. It can be any one of the emails prior to it, and you can make your decisions at any point in the future within that journey. So that sums up where we're planning on going through in today. We are looking at 2 more sessions where we'll be covering how to personalize content, some of the cross-cloud capabilities, making the right decision for your customers, exits, goals, how to optimize a customer path using some of the new functionality. And we're going to give a quick intro to some of the foundations of reporting for your Journey Builder activities. And then for part 3, we'll be looking at how you can really level up your reporting and get into some of the more nitty-gritty details. How you can use Smart Capture if you're not using an integrated org, where you might find Smart Capture is a really useful way of bringing people into journeys. How Einstein can help, potentially incorporating things like Ad Studio, how to pause journeys, and how to create your own journey templates, and how you can streamline some of the workflows with the native capabilities within the platform. So I think that wraps up for the main content we've got today. So I think we've got 10-15 minutes for some Q&A.
All right. Hello, everybody. This is Jenna. I'm going to be asking our panelists, Natalie and Jason, some questions from the audience here. Quite a few came in asking about, first off, provisioning. Let's go back to the beginning just a little bit. Some questions came in around Einstein, STO, and Split, also mobile push. Do any of those applications require extra licenses to use within Journey Builder?
If you've got access to mobile push and the rest of the mobile studio, it shouldn't be an additional license to use it within Journey Builder. It would definitely be a conversation to have with your account executive, but I don't believe so.
Excellent. All right. And all right, so starting off with our single send journeys, why would you guys recommend using a single send journey in Journey Builder?
For me, single send journeys work because there is a really straightforward flow to doing them. There are some benefits where single send journeys will update the data you have in all subscribers, whereas a batch send, like a user initiated send or a Salesforce send, when it sends and dispatches an email, it will say, oh, okay, I've got an email address for this subscriber. I'm just going to use that one because I know it. And that's how one of the ways that the batch jobs can send at such a high volume. Whereas with the Journey Builder single send, if, for example, I've changed my email address from being at hotmail.com to being at gmail.com, you would want to be able to use the one that I've updated to. And the single send emails gives you a really low tech investment way of making sure that that happens. But there are considerations with regards to the throughput. Journey Builder has a cap of around 2 million activities per hour per tenant. So a tenant will be your entire enterprise. So if you've got a send that needs to go out to 15 million people in less than 15 minutes, you're probably going to want to go down the user-initiated email route or the Salesforce send route rather than the Journey Builder single sends. But that doesn't mean that Journey Builder single sends don't fit in to some workflows.
Got you. So you're saying you don't have to set up a single send journey for every one-off email you send?
Nope.
Correct.
Nope.
The other thing that you can do, there's nothing that stops you from doing multi-step and only having one email in it. The advantage of starting with a multi-step is that once you have that email, then the next version you can add the cross-cloud update, or you could add an engagement tracking. So it's a great way to start, get your feet wet in the single send, because it's the same settings that you would interact with when you get to the multi-step.
Got you. Very cool. Thank you, guys. Question came in a little bit further down. I'm trying to find it, but I remember what it said. Is it a best practice with either with a multi-step to start with a wait step, or can you go straight into an email send?
You can go straight into an email send. It's just a question of making sure that you understand what your scheduling is for your journey and how that's being collected. For instance, if you're using Salesforce data, one of the things that Salesforce data does is it can listen, but it will launch them into the journey at that very moment. So if they do the action that qualifies them for that journey at 2 in the morning, that first email would go out at 2 in the morning. But if you've got a journey that is scheduled to only run once and it's running top of the day, or you are running it with an automation that runs at a specific time, you have less of an issue with that. So you can start directly with an email. You can also start directly with the decision splits. Random splits can also be first steps.
Yeah, I think one thing to be really aware of when you add a wait step to a journey, especially if it's going to be a short wait step. So, for example, you want to make everyone who enters the journey wait 30 minutes because you've recognized an event and you need to give it 30 minutes to make sure and validate that event is the correct event to send an email out. If you have a high volume of people entering a journey and hitting a wait step straight away, that will eat into that 2 million per hour tenant capacity. So if you throw 1 million people into a journey, there's 1 million people who need to enter, then 1 million people to wait. That would consume a lot of your bandwidth at a tenant level. So if you have anything that is triggered, anything that is behavior based, just be aware that if you start pushing everything through and into a wait step, that you might cause some bottlenecks elsewhere.
Got you. That makes total sense. So can take your overall marketing schema, I guess you could say, into consideration whenever setting up journeys. All right. So what if you want to wait a day and send a reminder if the subscriber didn't open an email?
So if you wanted to wait a day and send a reminder, you could do the same thing we did and use an engagement split. So I would send the email, have my wait for a day, and then I would do the engagement split and have it check to see if they engaged with the email. And then if they did not engage with the email, then we can resend that email by adding an additional email activity with the same email, but on the other path there.
So yeah, I've just put that scenario into Journey Builder now. So you can see that we take out that 1 day wait at the beginning. Someone's come into the journey, we've waited a day and we've checked to see if they've opened that email. If yes, they carry on and they exit. If no, we send them an email again. you can change this to be based on, like I say, opens, or clicks, or you can stack these. So we've said that this person has opened, and we may want to send them something different, but you can add another engagement split here and say, has this person, for example, clicked on the registration link in this email? So if I select that email and choose clicks, let's just once all links in this email, that's fine. So we can say this person has opened and clicked, therefore we know they've expressed a firm intent to register for the webinar. So we can either send them another campaign, or we can leave them to trickle out naturally. Or if they've opened but not clicked, we may want to send an improved kind of message around, here's what you'll get if you register for this webinar today, and blah, 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 and the rest of the content around it based on the behaviors that the customer has taken. So you can get quite granular using just this native engagement split capabilities. So in this instance now, if it was a case of I didn't open the email, Gilda opened and clicked the email, and Natalie opened but didn't click the email, we have 3 unique customer experiences here just by adding 2 engagement splits.
That makes sense. Speaking of engagement splits and behavioral splits, I moved the question. Sorry, I was distracted by your demo there, Jason. I apologize, guys. Jason gave such a good response. I moved the question. Okay. What type of weight by attributes can you have? And I think they're talking about behavioral splits, or what sort of attributes can you split by behavior? Can you have an attribute of logged into the community, for example? So I'm assuming they're looking for someone that's been logged into their website or something like that.
So again, remember that when it starts the wait activity, that's when it's going to check that value. So it's going to, if you want it to check to see if they have logged in on that date, then the wait would be to that date. But if it says they logged in 3 days ago, that date field isn't necessarily going to be the best option. There are a couple of options with that. You can have a SQL job that checks that and writes to a data extension that you can reference. So if they've logged in, maybe they wait 3 days and your SQL job does that calculation for you. One of my favorite uses of a wait by attribute is for birthday. You can set up a birthday campaign. If you have a birth date on your contact, then you have them wait by attribute being their birthday. And then when they hit their birthday, they get a happy birthday from us message. And that's a really great use for it.
Good example, Natalie.
Who doesn't like getting birthday freebies?
Everybody loves getting birthday freebies. You guys might be covering these next couple of questions in your next session, but I'm gonna ask them anyways. When updating an email for a journey or for an active journey, can you do that within the email itself, or should you go into the email from the journey within the journey?
So what I would recommend, I know from it's easier to edit their emails inside of Content Builder. Go into Content Builder, make your edits. Then what I do is I go into Journey Builder and I go and I reselect that email so that it updates and pulls in a new version of it. If you make the change inside of Journey Builder, it changes it on that snapshot of it, but not necessarily on the email itself in Content Builder. So you want to make sure that you are aware of that line of what is the snapshot that's part of the journey versus what is your ongoing email in Content Builder to use.
That is excellent advice. So you want to refresh that creative and make sure you keep a version history of it within Content Builder itself, right?
One thing to note about that is if you update your email in a live journey, when you go to make your new draft, it won't necessarily pull that update through. So even though you've updated that journey,
You're breaking up there, Natalie. I'm going to ask you to repeat what you're saying.
What I said, just to repeat, if you create a new version, the update in the email doesn't necessarily get pulled forward. So make sure before you activate any new version that you double check your email activities to make sure that they're the correct email and that there's the correct version that you're looking for.
Excellent advice. Thank you for repeating it. We're going to go answer a few more questions here and run over just a few minutes because we've got some really good questions coming in. Once an email has been set from Journey Builder, can you update a broken link from within the email like we can do within Email Studio? Is that possible to do within Journey Builder email, single send emails?
No, unfortunately not. At this point in time, that is not possible. So I've raised this as an idea previously because that is one of the small limitations with Journey Builder is that because of the triggered send nature, because it's built on that triggered send architecture rather than the job send architecture, you can't update a link post send as you would with a user initiated email or a Salesforce send email.
Excellent, thank you. So everybody go and upvote that in the idea exchange. Jason, if you can send a link out or add a link to the slides or something to that. Yeah.
There was one question. There was one question I saw that I think is really important to answer. If I can just
please do.
There was a question about what happens if two contacts have the same subscriber key when they enter into the journey. How many would be there in the journey? A lot of that comes down to how you set up the entry criteria or the re-entry requirements. If you set that up to re-enter at any time, both records would go in, but the campaigns would be dispatched to whatever email address is on that record. So if, for example, there was two of me with my same subscriber key, but two email addresses, that email would be dispatched twice, once to each email address. If I had the same email address, it'd be dispatched twice. If you're using re-enter at any time. Whereas if you use contact can re-enter after exiting, only one of those rows would go in, and you can't necessarily control which row would go in. So it's just one to be aware of. If you've got duplicate subscriber keys, how you want to manage that. I would normally try and dedupe before you push them into the journey in the first place.
Thank you for asking or answering that. And I know there are a ton of questions coming in around data sources for journeys, especially specific to coming over from Salesforce Core and through the connector. Folks are asking about using Salesforce data extensions as entry sources. Maybe in our next session, were you guys planning on covering any of that? Or maybe we can answer some of these after the call or later on.
We are planning to cover cross-cloud capabilities, and that'll include the things that you can do using the update to Salesforce, but also the different entries that you can do through the connector.
Perfect. So we'll leave those questions for the next session. And on that note, I'm going to ask one last question from the crowd here before we wrap up. Is there a resource that explains all of these considerations for each item in Journey Builder? And I think you've got that slide open already.
So there is lots of documentation around Journey Builder. Yeah, it's one of the most documented elements of Marketing Cloud. So I cannot recommend enough going and taking a look at the documentation that's there. There is a range of communities that are, creating their own content to support where there are specific questions that aren't answered by the documentation or specific use cases that are unconventional. So obviously Natalie is on sfmcgeeks.com. You'll find some of the content that I write on howtosfmc.com. There's the Stack Exchange. There's even Twitter is a great place to ask questions. If you're not sure, there's a lot of the community are active there.
You can also check on Trailhead. There's a really good Journey Builder Basics trail that you can complete. And if you're one of those people that just learns better in a classroom, Salesforce does offer a Journey Builder 101 Academy class that you can also sign up for.
Those are all really good information. Maybe, and I'm going to ask you guys to do one more thing for our audience, is maybe collect a slide with all the resources available, or the ones that you know of, so that they can quick link out to them, including that Trailhead, because I know folks are very interested in taking those trails on Trailhead, getting those badges.
We can absolutely add that.
Beautiful. Thank you, guys. All right. And on that note, Jason, Natalie, thank you so much for your Journey Builder Basics Part 1 course. This has been absolutely fantastic. Everybody, please do sign up for next week's class. Next Tuesday, August 18th, Journey Builder Part 2, Natalie and Jason Part 2. We're going to show you about all the interesting cross-calc capabilities and some of the learning about goals in Journey Builder and the Path Optimizer. So join us again next week. And Gilda, once again, thank you as always for hosting these and presenting these Lookup Answers and Technical Marketer meetups to the community. We thank you very much. And everybody have a good day. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, folks.
Bye-bye.